what would cause someone to just stop eating sugar? Like, just put it down. Not going to do that anymore. No more junk food, no more cookies, no more cake, no more birthday cake. Like,
Hey,
what would
no more
cause
bread, no
someone,
more rice, no more cereal.
yeah, like what would
Yeah.
cause someone to just say, that's it, I'm done. Well, we're going to talk about, first of all, our
Mm-hmm.
journey into keto, and also just reminding people for the 100th time, keto is not a zero sugar diet. Hello, Wellness Warriors. Welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, Pat Chat Edition. I'm Violet.
And I'm Pat. So surprisingly enough, after like you've been on 2 years now,
More than 2 years.
more than 2 years on YouTube now, people are still very curious about like you always talk about your hip issue, but maybe you didn't go like enough in detail. So I was like, oh, let's go through that.
First of all,
Actually, let's go through what make you go through the decision of changing your situation, because keto was not like the first idea you had when you had this hip issue, right?
that is true.
You did some research and like there was some stuff before you found keto. So yeah, let's do.
So let's
we'll
go into the
recap.
Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
Are we going to start at the beginning? Okay, start at the beginning. When I was in my 20s, early 20s, knee issues, back issues, elbow, like every joint that I even believe I lived through some periods of gout. Every joint that could possibly hurt started to hurt. Now, in my family, there's arthritis, and I just kind of figured, okay, it's like other people had arthritis. I guess I'm gonna have arthritis. And although I was only like 21 or 22 when it started, and by 20, for sure by 26, it was like woohoo. Um, so I was used to just being in pain, and I had to take a decision: am I going to not do anything, or am I just going to do my sports and do whatever and be in pain? So I learned to ski when I was 24. I started to just do all the things I love to do. I joined a badminton club. I was playing badminton, which you can imagine knees, right? The stop and go and stop and go. Like everything that I could think of doing, I started to do because I didn't know how much time I had left with these joints that are going to be working properly. And I just wanted to do everything I could do. And then, and the age of 45, 46, like I like 45, like I started to be a bit more achy, but like when I turned 46, and then that year of 46, my hip just started to be something. And by the time winter of the year that I was 46 rolled around, we couldn't go skiing. I mean, I couldn't walk up the stairs or any incline, actually. I couldn't, like what I'm doing right now, sitting in a chair like this with my leg hanging off, I couldn't do that. And sitting in my office chair, which usually I would sit there with my legs, I couldn't do that with my legs crossed. I couldn't do that. So I basically couldn't sit for more than 40-ish minutes, and each session that I do is 45 to 50 minutes. So you can imagine that just getting through my work day actually became an exercise in in Violet's Not Happy.
You had a hip issue, but like, how did it feel like? Is hurting all the time? What kind of symptoms, or like
On the
how did you
days that
show?
I was home, it was better because I could sit, stand, sit, stand. So like it's funny how when you're home you're doing things, right? So you're sitting for a little while and then you get up and you do some stuff and whatever. And so I was never allowing myself, and I kind of figured this out kind of later, that when I was home, I would shift between sitting and standing and walking and not walking and moving around enough in my day. So on the weekends it felt better. I also did figure out that walking seemed to help. And that was something I figured out later in the process. So I started walking every morning before work, which allowed me to get a few hours in before my hip would start to hurt me so much that I couldn't, well, not that I couldn't sit because I kind of had no choice, but that sitting was a challenge. And then I would also say that, like, I didn't really know. All I know is I had pain. I really didn't have a clue what was causing the pain, which is where I started to be afraid that I'm going to need surgery or be on medication forever or all kinds of things, which then led me to start to do a bit more research. So the pain, honestly, it felt like the pain was in the joint. It wasn't on the outside. It wasn't like either part. Like it wasn't my thigh. It was in the
hip.
joint.
Basically, it's that pain that caused you to do some research. But like like for sure, like I'm knowing you didn't search about keto first. You search about pain, about joint pain.
I didn't
about,
even
like,
know what keto was at the time.
Okay, yeah.
I had no idea what keto was. What I did was, before I did the research, the first thing that I did was I tried to lose weight because my first thought was, okay, well, I'm heavy.
Okay, even before you start.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought,
Okay,
oh, I'm
yeah, I
heavy.
remember.
Maybe what's going on is that I just need to lose some weight. And so I think I was being good and eating.
Okay, I remember now. Is that time that actually you started walking? I started walking too because we had this little challenge where we had a spreadsheet. Remember where we were weighing ourselves every week and try
Well,
to
okay.
like
That
lose the
was
same.
Okay, that was Mr. IT's first attempt at getting me to input any numbers, which I never did.
No, we were just like no, not at all. No, we just like following the number of pounds lost. Like I wasn't
No,
just
but that was
thinking,
yeah. Okay. So
yeah.
the truth. Hold on.
I don't care about it.
Part one, Mr. IT guy was trying to get me to track and weigh and all these things. And so, if you remember correctly, version 1, I didn't do it. So you had the spreadsheet. You sent me the spreadsheet. I looked at it and said no. And then we were walking and whatever, and you were walking and you were tracking your numbers, and I was like whatever. And
but the goal was to lose
But,
basically each of us like to 20, 30 pounds. Like that was the goal.
Yeah, you were trying to motivate me. If I remember correctly, at the end of like 6 months of like walking and trying to accomplish all of this, I had lost a grand total of 0 pounds. Being very low fat and trying to be like eat properly and it wasn't doing anything. So if I remember correctly, that's when I started to search for what causes, because, well, first of all, the walking was making me feel better. So all of a sudden, I kind of switched from thinking it's a weight issue to it can't just be a weight issue because the walking actually makes it feel better for a little while. And that's when I started to do the research of what causes hip pain. And I learned that carbohydrates cause inflammation. And at that point, I started to ask, well, how can you minimize carbohydrates? And it was in that question of how to minimize carbohydrates that I learned about keto. So it wasn't a straight line. And it was, I probably suffered for an extra 6 months to a year unnecessarily. And even when I found that keto would help me to manage my carb intake and that carbs were the problem, I didn't believe it. So I learned that information at like the beginning of February. And I didn't actually take any action until the middle of April because I didn't believe it. Right? I was like, it's impossible. How could carbohydrates cause inflammation? And yet everything that the government puts heart checks on and everything that we're encouraged to eat is full of sugar. The logic wasn't there. I thought this was a garbage article, the first article. But then I found a second and a third and a video after video and doctor after doctor. And all of a sudden it was just like, and Canadian doctor, that actually mattered to me. When I found Dr. Fung and watched his videos, Canadian doctor, then I was all of a sudden thinking that this is not, a cash money grab. He wasn't asking for anything. He was simply giving the information. And that's the other part of the story. When I started to look around at how many doctors were just giving the information, asking for nothing. And all of a sudden, I believed. I believed at that moment.
Okay. So what I don't remember, like after you did your research, what were the first thing you changed, or like how did you change your diet?
I downloaded an app. By that point, when I realized that keto was the answer, I had already watched a few of the doctor's videos and realized like bread, pasta, rice, like that was going to be out of my life. So I downloaded the app and I started to look for vegetables that I would be able to eat. And of course, being new to keto, I also was looking at recipes of how to make like replacement things. That was honestly the first, that was my in. So my entrance into keto was really all about get my carbs as low as possible. And although I had watched the doctor's information and understood that this was going to help me to have better health, I think I still didn't fully understand what the carbohydrates were doing specifically. So at the very beginning, my biggest focus was get my carbs low so that my hip could stop hurting.
And it did. Right, how long did it take?
Month and a half.
Month and a half. So like you got
Or
rid of.
let me be clear.
Right.
I noticed that it was gone after a month and a half.
Okay. Okay, because it was maybe.
But it was
earlier
really,
than-
I think I didn't even realize
Oh,
when
yeah.
it was just not hurting me anymore. I was so focused on just eating right, and I wasn't really.
Okay.
So I can't really tell exactly what day, but I noticed, because actually what happened was you asked me how's my hip,
Hmm.
and I had forgotten.
And what's amazing to me, like it amazes me, is that actually you never really stopped your research on keto. Like so, like even up to date, I often see I often see you watch a video about keto or watch a video like keto. So you never actually stopped your research on keto.
I think it's really because of where I come from.
Hmm.
I'm a psychologist, and
Hmm.
we are lifelong learners. So I think that I just had this idea in my head, and I still
Hmm.
have this idea in my head that I don't know everything. Maybe if I was only living my keto lifestyle strictly for myself and not trying to share, I might have slowed down a bit. But because I also want to make sure I give good information to all of you, that I keep myself as much up to date as I possibly can. But then of course that helps me,
Hmm.
right? Like, I mean, just things that I've learned about macrophages. When you have inflammation, macrophages become deployed, and they go and help to clear up them. And I wouldn't have known that if I
Hmm.
wasn't still researching and trying to understand why is it that living a ketogenic health lifestyle helped my hip.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of things that I think that I learned after the fact that not only keep me on track, but then help me to help you guys when you ask questions.
Yeah, that's a good thing because for me, I'm being more lazy. I think, and to be honest, I think I wasn't even convinced of that at the beginning. I think I just did it just I guess for the sake of doing it because like I think my point was if it's good for her, it's gonna be good for me. so,
Well, I think there was
I
also the
like,
weight loss. You didn't
Yeah,
really
yeah, I
start
didn't-
until my weight started to go down.
yeah, it's true. And then after, I know my blood pressure was always been a bit high. I did a couple years ago, like a full physical exam, and like the doc was like, "Oh, you should track your blood pressure." And so I was tracking once in a while, but I never saw an improvement at all in the blood pressure. It was like always high, but like at the same time, we were hearing so much bad things about blood pressure medication, and some were recalled, and some were causing cancer. I really didn't want to go there. So getting into keto for weight loss like worked and actually improved blood pressure at the same time. For me, it was a more progressive approach to keto. I was like, okay, I knew like pasta. I didn't care really about pasta. I didn't care about the cereal, grains, rice. I could live without. For me, it was like bread that was a little bit harder to to get rid of. You came to my place. You were seeing bread in the fridge, but like it ended up spoiling all the
garbage.
time. So I was taking one slice just once in a while, and but that's
See,
the
like
thing
that's
about-
the thing about you though, that you do the things that I would never be able to do, because eating one slice of bread I think would have frustrated me, because that's not a real sandwich.
Oh,
And I feel
okay.
like that would have frustrated me, versus you were somehow able to eat one slice of bread at a time, and I was just like, I don't understand how
Okay,
you
how
do
am I
that.
able to do that? Yeah.
I'm like that person that if I'm in for a penny, I'm in for a pound.
Okay. No, I think I was able to be more reasonable, maybe like the word I'm thinking of now.
I
But
think the
like,
one comment I want to make before we get too far
Right.
away from it is you said that you started keto for the weight loss and it helped your blood pressure. But I feel like we don't realize is that you were doing keto, it helped your blood pressure, and then your weight regulated. And it was the
Yeah.
other way around. And
Oh,
actually, if you
maybe,
look
yeah.
at the numbers, like how your numbers were coming down faster than your weight was coming down.
Sure, yeah.
And this is the
Yeah.
thing that I want to make sure everybody understands is that the reason our weight is able to regulate is because our
health,
body is
yeah.
starting to heal things and adjust things, and it's not focused on the scary things that sugar
Yeah.
is doing to us.
Like we all know how you hate to cook, and you were coming to my place, so I did feel like not nice having a big spaghetti plate while I was making you like a piece of meat with salad. So that's why I'm just saying like I jumped in at least in the healthier habits just to be like a bit respectful of your
I'm trying to remember at the very beginning when I was eating and you were still doing the regular thing. I'm going to point out to you what I think you're remembering differently than me is that it was only the days that we were together that you were cooking any differently. When you were alone with your boys, you were eating whatever you were eating like usual. But when we were together, because the boys, and can I just point out, his kids are really good at vegetables. So it was not a hard sell. It was my daughter that was the hard sell for the vegetables, like the more vegetables that were like low glycemic vegetables, like she likes potatoes and whatever. But now we were doing like other kinds of vegetables. And I think the compromise that we ended up doing was that we were still making the kids potatoes and carrots and whatever's, and we were just having, I was having, at the beginning, I was having like my different vegetables, and you guys were still having what you're having. I want to point out, and I don't know maybe if you felt bad or not about what you were eating, but I want to point out to everybody, the thing that I remember so clearly was once I passed that 2-week mark, it didn't matter what my daughter was eating. I didn't care. Yeah. It took me 2 weeks, but again, remember, I jumped straight in. I cut all the carb. I was doing 20 grams or less every single day. Sure. So at 2 weeks, and I remember this. I remember being at my, like, you know, a week and a half, 2 weeks, and being like, wow, there's chocolate on the counter, and I'm not I'm not even like interested in it. It was really dramatic.
That dramatic. Yeah, true.
Right? And I do remember that was part of our conversation when you were kind of struggling to get through those last bits. And I was just saying, like, just do it. You're going to see, like, once you just do it, the cravings go away, because that was my experience. Now, well, I will add, because of the way that I did it, and I did not understand about the addiction, and so I didn't take any precautions about having withdrawal symptoms, I had huge withdrawal symptoms. I had 3 days of, my goodness, that my head was hurting. I felt nauseous. I felt like I had all the things you would think I was getting off like some kind of hard drug. And it was horrible. But at the same time, like, I just had this goal in my head of like, my hip has to feel better. And thank goodness it only lasted 3 days though. And thank goodness that by the middle of day 2, I was starting to feel better. If that would have gone on for a week or two, I don't know if I would have made it, but it didn't. And so I made it. But I could see where, especially if you're the kind of person that kind of cycles in and out of keto, like going through that more than another reason that I believe that I never cheated is because the idea of going through that again
keeps you from that.
Like, that was not fun. And I'm a person that lived a lot of pain throughout my life, and that was something that it was just like, no. I did not want to did not want to redo that again.
It's a pretty clear idea that, like, the sugar is a substance. Like, we don't call it food purposefully, because like it's more just like a substance than
in our house. I actually ask the children when they're gonna take something, like, are you eating sugar or are you eating food? I actually ask them that because I want them to think about it. Is that you're taking more sugar? I say that to them because I want them to start to think about it, right? Because at the end of the day, if I'm not teaching you to do better than what I did, I'm setting you up. And I don't think that's fair.
No. And what's like surprisingly, they do better. Like most of them, like I would say 2 out of 3. I have one that still has like a sweet tooth, being like he likes his dessert, but like clearly the 2 others like make conscious choices of avoiding like
I wouldn't say avoiding, because they do have them sometimes.
Not choosing,
but they choose better.
They choose better,
They choose better.
And they can space them out. Like, I know my son likes those big oatmeal cookies that like I will sometimes get from him, but when they're not there, like, oh, Dad, you didn't buy that. No, like we had them last week and it's not a big deal. And even when I have them, like, he spaced them out and is gonna have I was just gonna say half of one.
Often I see him take half.
Like half of one. And,
whereas before, taking a whole one was automatic.
Yeah.
And I see him often take half.
Yeah. So so the positive effect of having less sugar on our bodies like are clear.
And my daughter, I think she also has like her moments where you see clearly where she's like, okay, you know what, can we just have the meat? That's all I want.
Okay. And I noticed she eat a lot more. Like we're salad lovers. We have salad all the time. She loves salad. And she loves salad. Like when like we started, like she didn't like, even
it wasn't her favorite thing.
Like salad, I think. So like for me, my boys like did always like Caesar salad, so we just like had it a bit more. But like yeah, your daughter like didn't was not a big salad eater, and now she just had the same thing as us. So we just like have some meat, put it in our salad, and do a smaller serving, and she's gonna have
She
that
actually
too. So
requests salads for school sometimes, which I find very
that's
entertaining
good.
as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's good.
yeah.
Talking about a little bit about our situation, we had a comments from a viewer that was like wanted to know more about Violet's hip issue, and like his comment went like, "I'm 35 and I have hip pain on my left side. Only when I sit down, it comes and goes, and I'm not sure why. Perhaps it's due to carbs, much like your history. I will try to see if it goes away with low carb."
So
Like,
I will
huh?
just like the one little thing it said with low carb.
Yeah, go full on
I
keto.
would go for keto
Yeah.
or like low carb is still enough for us to have inflammation.
Mm.
I'm just pointing that out just because you said low carb. Because low carb is still enough for us to have inflammation.
People are still wondering that like, oh, really? Are carbs that bad? Are carbs that toxic? So
I don't know how much I can scream it, but okay.
yeah. But let's go back to basic. Like I wanted to do like just a back to basic about insulin, because it's all related to insulin. I think we did videos and you did videos. It's not about like calories, calorie in, calorie out. It's really about like hormones and insulin. Like your weight is regulated through that.
The thing that I think is really interesting is that for me, it clicked when I understood that every person has about 5 grams of carbs in their body at any one particular point in time. So then, I start, again, research mind. It's like, so how much is 5 grams? It's a teaspoon.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I were to check, for example, that slice of bread that we were talking about, 3 teaspoons. When you check like an apple, 5 teaspoons. When you check a banana, 7 teaspoons. So all of a sudden, it's like, well, if my body can only manage 5 grams and it tightly regulates it. That was the thing when I was reading it. It tightly regulates the amount of sugar that can be in the blood, has to stay around that number. And I say around that number because maybe for me it's 5.1 or 4.9 or whatever. Like we all have our, depending on what your size and whatever, we all have that little number, but it's somewhere around 5. And when I understood that, it was like, well, wait a minute. I was eating 300 to 350 grams of carbs every day. How does that make sense? If my body is strictly regulating and trying to keep me at 5, that's not even just 5 times the amount. Now you were like, how many hundred times the amount was I actually eating? And all of a sudden it became very obvious to me that there's a problem there. So I did more research and found out, well, how am I not in a problem? And then you learn about insulin.
That's insulin that's regulating. That when you say it's strictly regulating your amount of carbs, it's with insulin.
Yeah, insulin is making sure that every time I eat sugar, it's being put away. How? As fat. So now it becomes very interesting because you start to understand why over the course of my life I've gained weight. But the thing is that yes, insulin is putting some of it away as fat. Some of it is prompting my body to create inflammation. Some of it is causing plaques in places that there shouldn't be plaques, and some of it. So like all of a sudden you start to realize that there's all of these things happening because there's too much sugar in the system. And PCOS, Alzheimer's, like there's so many conditions that they believe is related to the amount of sugar that we eat. And yet, if I go to the store and I check the cereal aisle, there's all kind of heart healthy checks on this food that
Whole
contradicts
grains.
what we know to be reality. So anyways, I digress. What I figured out was that if insulin's major job, is making sure that my sugar levels of my blood do not get out of control, and knowing that if my sugar levels get out of control, that's the condition known as diabetes, where you'll have to take medication. And what medication do they give you? Well, they start off with metformin, which forces the body to make more insulin. But then what happens? They start giving you insulin. And so all of a sudden it became interesting to me to say, well, how does that make any sense?
Yeah. But before we get there, that's the thing. Like, but because I want to make the little bridge like with the insulin sensitivity first. The problem is like you spike your insulin react a certain way, but the more you spike it, you desensitize it. that's when the medication and diabetes comes in. Right?
So the interesting thing is like, if I were to right now slap Pat,
Go ahead.
he would be like, ouch, right? And he would feel it and he would be hurt and he'd be mad at me. And then if every single day I slap Pat in the exact same way, at some point he'd become desensitized to the fact that I'm going to slap him. And at some point, right? But here's the funny thing. Me slapping him is still going to cause problems on him. Even though he's going to be desensitized, she's going to do it. And I know she's going to do it, right? It's the same thing with alcohol, right? When you first drink alcohol, woohoo, right? And then if you drink it every week, if you drink it every day, if you drink it every hour, you stop getting the reaction that you got that first time that you, right? We become desensitized to something. We need more of it to get the same reaction. So I wouldn't be able to slap him and get the reaction, but if I stopped him, I'd probably get a reaction, right? But again, I'm causing more damage every time I do that. And I think that's the part where we don't really allow ourselves to understand that it's not because I can't see the damage, that the damage isn't happening. It is happening.
But for the majority of us, we can see the damage, or we can see, but where I'm gonna go is like, before you get to the point where there's real damage, like you've been piling on pounds of fat.
That's not true.
Right? No, it's not true. Okay.
Look at my story. My inflammation was there from 21, 22, and I was a normal weight.
Okay.
Right? I gained the weight after my daughter.
Okay.
Right? So you think about it. How was I able to be at a normal weight all that time? Because there was inflammation that was hitting Violet. How many women out there have PCOS and they're at a normal weight?
Okay.
Right? So how many people have heart disease and they're at a normal weight? The problem with sugar is that it's not everybody. And this is, so that personal threshold for fat storage, that matters, right? Amy Berger talks about that. That you have a personal fat storage threshold, and that people who are able to store more are able to delay the internal negatives. But the people who can't store more, their internal negatives hit them much younger. Right? So for me, my internal negatives were hitting me really young because for some reason when I was younger, I wasn't storing. Maybe it was because I gained weight with my daughter, because even my pregnancy, people that saw me at 6 months pregnant did not believe I was pregnant until I pulled my shirt back. Right? I was just not storing. But after that, like, well, eventually I did kind of, there was an increase in weight eventually. And then, but after that, for some reason, all of a sudden I was able to put on weight. So we need to be careful about that, because we think that it's about fat. It's not about fat. Fat is saving my life. We don't understand. When I say that you're not able to see the problem, it's because you really can't see the problem, because storing fat is not the problem. The fat is saving your life. The problem is, if I don't store this fat, I'm going to become diabetic. I'm going to become Alzheimer's. I'm going to be those are the real problems, right? Your body doesn't care if you're 1,000 pounds as long as you're alive.
So what that would mean is that your insulin response would be too low to put the carbs away, so the carbs are damaging your system. If you don't have that fat storage response, am I getting that right? So if I'm not
even sure why I wasn't able to store fat sooner.
But that would mean that the carbs were like you mentioned your 5 grams, so you had more carbs in your system doing the damage, doing the inflammation.
Yeah, exactly. So what I think it is that scenario where it depends on what your body. So how did my body choose to respond to the sugar? And there's lots of people where the sugar comes in and your body puts it away as fat. For some reason, my body didn't do that. And it went to joints and it created inflammation. And it went, there's some people that they get it's like glaucoma and all. Like the sugar goes to the wrong place. It's in your foot and you get gout. And the next thing, it goes to this place where it's doing stuff that it shouldn't be there and it shouldn't be doing that. Right? But it's causing problems. Some people, like their midsection, just their liver is just struggling, trying to get rid of it, and it just inflames, and they're thin everywhere else. right?
Mm.
Everybody's different. That's the part of this that's so frustrating,
Yeah.
is that if we could point and say sugar did that, I think more people would be convinced. But because we can't point
Right.
and say sugar did that, because for you sugar did heart, for me sugar did
Oh,
inflammation,
it
for
did
that
belly
person,
too.
huh?
It did belly too.
Okay. But my point, the part that was, well, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
the belly, the
Yeah,
liver
yeah.
was dangerous too. I was gonna say which one
Yeah.
was dangerous. Okay, yeah, the liver was dangerous, and
It
yeah,
was like visceral fat.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. But like, but for some people, they
Mhm.
don't get the liver part right away, right? So it's more the other things that I really want all the
Mhm.
wellness warriors out there to understand, that it's not one thing. We are too complex for there to be a in out. We're not a closed system. This is going back to that whole calories in, calories out. That's why it doesn't work. We're not a closed system. We're an open system. And each of us, our body decides how it's going to best manage a situation. And we haven't even touched all the, what are my hereditary internal negatives? Because don't forget, Violet has thalassemia. Like, what do you have that maybe is either not diagnosed, or like what, like that we don't know about, that could be changing what your body decides to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
with the
yeah. A
sugar?
genetic baggage, like
Right? We
yeah,
all have our
genetics.
genetic biases, but the baseline, can there be more than 5 grams of carbs of sugar in your body at any point? No.
Mhm.
Your body will not allow it. Insulin's going to step in,
Mhm.
and it's going to do what it can until it can no longer do what it can.
Mm. We had a chat like a while back about like how bodybuilders in 2020 2019 are different than the one in the 70s, and you see their midsection like, and
Today?
it's yeah today and they try, of course, like all the medication and the drugs they take probably don't help, but they never talk about like sugar, and they eat like ridiculous amount of. I have my son that was watching movies about, oh, this his favorite YouTuber ate like the most powerful man in the world for a day. And honestly, like the amount of carbs, like you were talking about 300, like when we were standard American diet, I think them it's 1,000 grams of carb, like it's a kilogram of carbs that they have, because it's pasta versus like noodles, and it's not even healthy stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, like just I was talking to my son, that might not be the best like example of what you need to eat in a day.
We also ignore the fact that when those bodybuilders, so they have the large midsections. Yes, some of it's sugar, but it's also, if I'm taking any kind of drug to enhance my musculature that's foreign, my body is still going to see it as a toxin, and my liver is still going to have to
Yeah.
detoxify that. So I do feel like there's multiple reasons that their midsections could be
Yeah.
like that. Not to mention that there's some kind of muscle, something that happens to. So I mean, it's much more complicated than just one thing. But I do feel that we are misinformed
Yeah.
when we talk about eating a meal to go get a pump in the gym. This idea that I can eat something and it's no, it has to pass through me. Like, we're not, again, it's not like putting oil in a machine. It has to pass through me, get converted so that it can be used as energy. So if I ate something at 2, there's no way that my workout at 3 is being fueled by that.
Yeah, but it always amazed me. Like when I got interested in that topic, I started watching videos about like in the 70s, especially with Arnold, like Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was like Mr. Universe and like with his tiny stomach. What the guy was eating was just like steak and eggs and like source of fat and source of protein. So I think in that time there was like some kind of very very low carb slash keto diet that they have, because it was like mostly proteins, not fat, but like a huge amount of proteins, but there was no
Well,
carbs
but the thing is, it's mostly protein, but the fat is coming in the
in the
protein.
protein.
In,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in your muscle meat, you
in
always
your
have
meat, yeah.
fat. And if they're eating steaks,
Yeah.
there, even if they don't eat the fat on the outside, the muscle meat has fat in it.
But very rarely they talk about healthy fruits and healthy cereal in that. Like
And
in
by the way, eggs are
70s.
50-50.
So yeah,
50-50
yeah,
fat.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
he
So,
was
so,
having
yeah, he was
his
having
fat sources. Yeah.
Sure. Unfortunately, or anyway, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but it takes like it can take many years before problems start happening with our standard American diet, and then like how long before we see problems, or because
It depends.
it depends. Like you can just
So that's the scary thing.
mm,
How many of us were raised on formula or raised our children on formula? So if you come out the womb and I'm already giving you a high sugar input, you can have problems right away. The other thing that we need to think about is, although it takes us a long time to create the negatives, why it's taking a long time is because we are built to survive. So your body is fighting really hard against you becoming in a negative situation. Like I said, all the people who are able to gain weight tend to do better in the metabolic side because they're gaining weight. But you can gain weight and still have metabolic issues. It's obviously possible. I think the thing that we need to be careful of is believing that because I don't see extra fat on you, that means that everything's okay. That's not the case.
No, it's not. Yeah, at the same time, like we do see. I'm just thinking now about like how our young kids, like we've never had such a high number of
Obese.
obesity in our kids. Like so, and it's directly related. We might be tempted to put that on video games and they move less than we were maybe at our time, but it's clearly also a diet.
It's so funny to me that both you and I were in scenarios with our kids that were similar when they were younger. Like my daughter refused sweet things. Like even after she was allowed. So for 0 to 4, I restricted sweet things. But after 4, she didn't have even a taste of her birthday cake. Like she just no, I shouldn't say a taste. She tasted it. Like she didn't like it. She didn't actually eat a piece of birthday cake until her 6th birthday. Just not. And even at that, she ate the cake and not the icing. I really, it's amazing to me how, because I allowed her to focus on what she liked, first of all, that she was more towards things that to me, like I remember her eating oatmeal, which is still a carb, but without any sugar, without any, she would just eat oatmeal and milk.
Yeah.
And her favorite cereals were the bland Weetabix, like all the brand stuff. Like she liked the bland tasting cereals. Now again, I'm not going to pretend that they're not carb, but my point being, when I look back at the things that she loved vegetables more than like fruit back then. And when you look at the thing, it's like if I would have just followed her, I feel like her life would look so different today. But we're all constantly pushing, oh yeah, you can have this, you can have that, not realizing she didn't want it, and for good reason. Actually, that's the part I think I missed. I missed that she didn't want it for good reason. And your son was in the same situation. I remember when we were talking about this afterwards, how much stuff like he liked avocado. The both of them did. Like they liked things that were just like, and they avoided sweet things in the first few years. Like eventually they went towards them.
I think at some point, even though like we're not pushing sweet, like, well, we were pushing like too much, maybe like dessert and stuff, but we still, I think their diet composed of rice and cereal probably led them to have this little sweet tooth that they have right now. But like we said, like your daughter, actually she was like, how many years that she do gym, and like I don't think they're in trouble right now health wise. Like they're in a pretty good position.
No, I think all three of them are in a pretty good position. I think my bigger point though is that when we look at them under the age of 6, before they started to be in school and influenced by what other people were getting for snack and whatever, honestly, all three of them had a lean towards savory instead of sweet. Like all three of them. My daughter has always liked salty stuff. They all three had that lean away from sweet until school.
I know we often talk about that, but like how long would it take to do repairs? So I know like most of people that are going keto like lost an amazing amount of weight. Like you did it in 4 or 5 months, and I think I did too. Like lost when I committed to that, I lost like in maybe 6 months. But like it's not because you lost the weight that the job is done and you can go back on your previous bad habits.
Yeah, first of all, there's no going back. I mean, if you go back, you regain the weight. Like that's just I find it interesting sometimes when I see videos that say, what to do what to do to not regain the weight after keto. Like
after keto,
that's a fight. That's an uphill fight. Like you're putting yourself in stress for no reason. So what I would say is that we know that the body itself is constantly refreshing, and it takes, according to the doctors, they say it takes about 7 years to get a refreshed body. But it's a constant, like, it's the same way that if you lived in a house, you're not going to just tear the house down and put it. No, you do the bathroom, and then you do the basement, and then you do the bedroom of the kid, and then you do the other kid, right? So it's piecemeal. So your body is constantly trying to fix what's broken. And as long as you give it the tools to fix what's broken, it's going to, so healthy protein, healthy fat. Your body builds with protein and fat. So if you give it the healthy stuff to repair, it will repair.
So even if you see some improvement after a couple of months, like it's not that it's necessarily done. Like you need to give it a good number of years, like up to 7 years, to fully repair. But even saying that, like, it doesn't mean that after 7 years you go back to your old habits and you're done with like keto. Like that's why we always talk about keto as a lifestyle. Like there's no going back to your previous.
So I guess I'm gonna hesitate with this answer, because I think the question mark that's in my mind was when you said that even if you see improvement after a few months, are you talking about weight, or are you talking about okay, so because to me,
weight.
I would more like to see people focusing on the fact that, hey, after a few weeks or months, I had more energy, or I had more flexibility, or I was able to like lift in the gym, and I would like to see people looking at that stuff, because that's actually the stuff that, if you look at it long term, that you can keep. Like, you're not going to lose weight forever. So if I'm using my weight loss as a measurement of health, it's like, I'm not going to be able to tell after 6 months whether I'm still healthy. I'm maintaining, but I'm not losing anymore. Right? So I feel like I would love people to think about, how do I feel? What's going on? Like, am I correcting internal issues that maybe I didn't even know were there, right? And this is the thing where once you start to understand that that carbohydrates cause inflammation that doesn't need to be there, because of course there's some inflammation we need, right? But it's causing inflammation that doesn't need to be there. And then you solve it. Like, do you know how amazing it is for me that I can run up the stairs and my knees don't hurt? Like, before the age of 46, I wasn't able to do that. I would run up the stairs sometimes, but my knees would hurt.
With the pain,
right? I would play badminton
with the pain,
and my knees and elbows would hurt and my back would hurt. And like, I was doing all these things and then living the pain. Now I do them and I feel good the next day. Like, I mean, when I fall, for sure, I might, especially when I get a cut or something, yes, that hurts. But it's not just the fact that I fell that's hurting me. Versus before, any knock on any of my joints meant Violet was going to be in pain for days and days and days. So I think that understanding that our body does refresh after about 7 years. So that means that everything that I eat today is going into that refresh, allows us then to be planning, what am I eating towards that refresh? So on a day-to-day basis, I'm asking you to consider, are cookies, chips, alcohol, processed foods,
processed food,
or high carb fruits and vegetables, are those the things that you want to build your body with? Or would you rather build your body with things that it actually can use to produce healthy you? Because animal needs animal protein to produce animal, right? And needs healthy fats to produce healthy cell membranes, neurotransmitters, all the things that we produce with these proteins and fats. Like, we need them. It's not even that it's nice to have. We need them to be healthy.
Yeah, so I think it's obvious, especially to us, but even it should be obvious to you guys that, like, if you just want to embark on a keto journey for 6 months to lose 50 pounds, that's a recipe for failure. I think, like,
long term, yes.
You
that's a yo-yo dieting story that you're going to be in forever, because you're going to lose the 50, you're going to gain 55. You're going to lose the 55, you're going to gain 62. And it's not healthy. I think the bigger problem is just understanding it's not healthy. Like, I'm going to 6 months eat really clean, and then lose the weight, and start eating sugar that's doing what? Damaging my body. There's no way, again, the example of there's no way that if I cut myself and then wait for it to just almost heal and then pull it open and then wait for it to just almost heal and then pull it, that's not going to become infected and become a bigger problem. Right? And we all know that from an exterior, Violet, that would be a dumb thing to do. But interior, we do it all the time. I'm going to cut. I'm going to keep sugar really under control so I can lose weight. And then I'm going to flood my body with sugar again. What do I think is happening internally? My body's being assaulted. And I want you to think about it like that. Your body is being assaulted because sugar in high quantities is toxic to your body. And it's not because you didn't die from doing that right now that means that it's a good thing to do. You can help us to be independent with some links that are in the description below. There are some videos on the screen right there that are going to help you to improve your health.
If you did like the video, please like and subscribe.
Wellness Warriors, always so happy that you guys come back, and everybody who's new, welcome. I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, Pat Chat Edition.
Talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week.